You're watching the Restoration Industry Book Review, a podcast that encourages roofers, flood and fire mitigation contractors to continually learn and grow to improve their businesses and lives. I'm Matt Danskin, a training consultant best known for teaching restoration contractors to consistently develop productive referral relationships with insurance agents. I'm sitting down with experts from across the industry to dive into the books that help them improve and make an impact on the restoration industry. All right, guys, we are back at the Restoration Industry Book Review for episode 12, and we are going to be looking at When Words Collide, resolving insurance coverage and claims disputes. I've got on the show today several esteemed guests, or a few esteemed guests. We've got Bill Wilson, the author of this book. We've got Derik, Kline, owner of Hail Trace, as well as Paul Reed, one of the owners of Northwest Roofing out of Denver, Colorado. Without further ado, I'm going to bring these guys on here. And guys, thanks for being on the show here today.
Thanks for having me.
I'll start off by saying, Derik, you look a whole lot different than you did in that intro video. My video production guy got a little bit mixed up there. It looks like you need to get in front of the green screen some more.
So I got about 8 years back and a head of hair on that video. So
yeah. A little bit taller, I think, too. But anyway, again, thank you guys for being on the show. This book, we've looked at a lot of different books in this show, and I think a lot of them have been kind of self-help type books. They've been personal development stuff, which is great. But I really appreciate that this is something that is very industry specific, really rich in terms of what it's covering. I think for anybody that is maybe got into the roofing industry or restoration industry as, a job, and they're moving into making this a career, and this is the path that they want to be in long term. You need to understand this stuff. I think it's going to serve you well and really help you make some money. So I want to start off with Bill, obviously being the author of this. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get all the experience and brains to write something like this for us?
Well, it's insurance, so brains aren't necessarily required, but I tell people I have kind of a Dilbert background. If you're familiar with the Dilbert comic strip, that I started out as an engineer. I got a degree in engineering, and my specialization was fire protection and safety engineering. So, needless to say, I got started working primarily in the insurance industry, and someone told me years ago that to be more conversant and to understand the industry better, I should get the CPCU professional designation. So I did that, and I got hooked on the insurance side. I ended up going from engineering into management for a while, did not like management. And so initially, before I got my engineering degree, let me backtrack for just a second. My plan was to be a high school teacher. That's what I was originally going to do. And at the very last minute, I'd already registered at college. I had a roommate, was ready to go. I was going to teach math or science in high school. And at the very last minute, I had a scholarship offer for an engineering school, and I got it. So my plans completely changed. I knew nothing about engineering. It was in Chicago. I'd never been to Chicago, never really heard of the university, which was the Illinois Institute of Technology. So I went and became an engineer, but I think somewhere deep inside, I always wanted to to teach. So I ended up making a career change in 1988 and went to work for the Independent Insurance Agents of America state affiliate in Tennessee, doing education and training. And that's really where I started learning policy coverages starting in 1988. And I've been teaching and writing about it ever since.
Very good. I know in the roofing industry, it seems like roofers are always getting frustrated with adjusters that don't know what they're doing. But I think roofers can be just as guilty in not understanding what's in the policy and what coverage is or isn't there, and the implications of all those things. It gets really complicated when you throw these things into the real world, I think. Mm-hmm. Paul, obviously, you've been at this for a while. You guys work on some pretty big claims and get into the weeds, I'm sure, on some of this stuff. Was there anything that stuck out to you, or anything that you thought was really important that you could see being a big benefit for people to understand?
My biggest takeaway from everything is really trying to learn your craft. It's frustrating to be in this industry and see a lot of people that are in it for many, many years that really don't know what's going on, don't even really know how to read an exact amount or to the basics. I always relate it back to I couldn't imagine if I moved to France, tomorrow, and I moved to France and I decide I'm not going to learn French. I'm just going to live there and just kind of straight by, and I'll probably do okay, but I'm not going to have the full benefits. And I really look at it like I'm in the roofing industry. Why wouldn't I learn everything I possibly can? Not only about material and selling, but about what I'm actually selling and how to benefit the homeowner the most. So tools like this, like this book, where you could really learn about these things. I mean, hey, education is powerful.
Absolutely. And, I think as a consultant, there's a bunch of consultants out there that'll teach you stuff and charge you a bunch of money. I don't even remember how much I paid for this book, but it wasn't much. And the information in here, I can see people leveraging into making, I don't know, millions, or at least just providing better service to their clients and being an asset and a resource. Derik, we talked about this a little bit. You're in a little bit different position in that you service the restoration industry, but you're not necessarily directly in it, but you're providing a lot of documentation, backing up what these contractors are doing. I wanted to get your thoughts on some of the information in here that kind of pertains to your corner of the world.
It was interesting reading the book because there were some things that definitely stuck out for me. That I come across being in this industry. Like I see it very consistently as happening. So for example, some of the things, just understanding and reading the policy. I think he called it, I got it on my notes here. Was it RFTP, right? In the book. And I thought that was understanding that, sometimes we'll get asked, so obviously we're on the hail side of things, and so typically what we get asked is when did it hail on this address? And we get asked that because the insurance company is asking for a data loss. And so we'll ask, well, is there, because we have to go through and do a bunch of research to figure out when it hailed, right? And so we'll go from current date, and then we'll work our way backwards to figure out. And we'll ask, so are you just needing the most recent date? Do you want us to look back 2 years, or how far back do you want us to go? And we'll get answered. I've been told can you get me 10 years? And I'll go, is that what's in the policy? You need to know what happened for the last 10 years at that address? And they go, well, I don't know what's in the policy. And I go, well, you might actually put your client in a bad position by giving 10 years of a data loss, right? There's some possibilities that we don't really need to do that, or I don't need to research that far back, right? I only need to go back. It's got a 1-year data loss on the policy. Why am I looking for hail that's 9 years old when there's only 1 year? Let's find out if you've got a claim that you can file or not. But figure it out with what's in the constraints of the policy, the contract, if you will. So like we come across that stuff pretty consistently where, they don't understand the policy, they haven't looked at it, or they just don't understand how that actually works and how data loss is important. But that's kind of the area where we kind of fit into that puzzle is, when that exclusion is there, or that factor that we have to go off of, which is there's a time period that the loss has to have occurred at, specifically hail or severe weather, wind, tornado, lightning, whatever it is on our end. What is that window of time, and finding out where we have to work that into. And that's where we kind of fit in the most. And that was kind of the stuff that I found very interesting was just understanding some of those policies. It was some interesting stuff too for my own personal use, but for my work purposes, that was definitely the stuff that stuck out to me.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, Matt, can I add to that really quick? I'm sorry. Let me add to that really quick. I was on a large multi-million-dollar claim this week that a guy didn't understand policy. We got called in, and it's probably too late because it expired. It's 2-year-old, and it's because an actual PA didn't understand the policy, and he's messed around with it for almost 18 months. And it's put the policyholder in a position where roof has damage, and there's probably nothing that's going to happen to this roof because someone didn't understand how the policy and what was really written in there. So, got to know your craft.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I was saying, I thought about you, Derik, when it comes to some of those dates of loss and the implications there. One of the things that stuck out to me, probably the biggest thing that stuck out to me in this book, was the fact that insurance policies are not a commodity. And I think that trips up a lot of people where they go, well, do homeowners policies cover this? I don't know. One policy can be different from another. Bill, can you take us into that topic and, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I've written and spoken a lot about that. It used to frustrate me when I worked for the Big I, the Independent Agents National Association. We had, and they still have, an Ask an Expert question, and we would get a question like you say, does a homeowner's policy cover, or does a general liability policy cover? Well, it depends on which one, because they're not all the same. Even companies that use ISO standard language may modify it, or they may interpret it differently. And that's something I really tried to hone in on in the book. I think in the book I've got something like 160 claim examples, including some roofing related claims. Like you mentioned hail. One of the most frustrating things about hail claims is that a lot of policies require that the damage be reported within a year of the date of loss. Well, with a hail claim, you may not know for months or sometimes maybe even years that you have damage when it finally manifests itself. It happened a long time ago, but you have a contractual stipulation that says that if you don't, make a claim within X number of time, then there's no coverage. I've been working for a long time trying to get things like that changed in insurance policies, working with ISO and other people. Same thing with hail claims and roofing or siding, where you have matching problems. You get damage on one side or to some shingles and not to all. And of course, the customer wants the entire roof replaced or all the siding replaced, and you get into issues in most insurance policies that we only cover direct damage, not consequential loss, which would be the matching issue. And I tell you, I've gotten claims paid. That's really the purpose of the book, is to help people when there's a disagreement about whether something's covered. I've gotten claims paid under homeowners policies because most homeowners policies have a pair or set clause that's typically applied to like sets of things, golf clubs or a set of dishes or something like that, where the part of them are destroyed, but not all of them, but they're worth less than they were before. And I used that para-set clause. I had a tornado come through my residence in 2013, and luckily didn't do a whole lot of damage to my home. I lost 19 trees in my yard, but I didn't have a lot of damage to my house. But part of the damage was 20-something shutters. Of those 20-something shutters, quite a few of them were damaged and could not be repaired. Others we never saw again. They went off in the tornado somewhere. So I invoked that para-set clause to get all brand new shutters. And the adjuster for the company, the insurance company, said nobody had ever invoked that clause in the policy before. And that's one of the advantages of knowing what you're doing and understanding your insurance policy. Is there stuff like that in there that a lot of people aren't aware of?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I hadn't really seen that much. Paul, I want to go over to you if you can here. I know you've got to take off a little bit early here, literally. But I want to go into in the book, it talks about kind of the tactical procedures and claims resolution steps. And step 0 is heading off the denials after the claim. Is that something that that you guys actively do to try to set up these claims right at the beginning so that you're not having disputes and coverage problems?
Yeah, we've actually been trying to get the full loss really kind of packaged together before we even call in a claim. On that, let them set the reserve before we even call in the claim, because if we come out like the old school way was I would just try to trick the adjuster to open coverage. He would set the reserve at 100,000 when we needed $1 million. Then it was a fight. We found we put all our cards on the table at the very beginning, and it's been a lot easier, and we have it really approved before we start. So that's kind of how we've been running.
Okay, awesome. That's I think you see more and more contractors in the industry moving that direction toward really setting up their claims properly on the front end so that they don't run into these issues, looking at what this actual particular policy covers and kind of analyzing the claim before they submit it so that they're not doing misjustice to their clients. One thing I want to go into, I'm going to go back over to Derik here. Derik, this book talks some about kind of the philosophy that they look at here. And I thought that was interesting where, because the carrier is basically offering this policy to the homeowner or to the property owner, or whatever it is, and they're just either take it or leave it. And because of that, the courts have tended to side with the homeowner because they're the ones that are most often taking advantage. The insurance company got the advantage to be able to write the whole contract. And so if you're going to interpret something, it needs to favor the property owner. Any thoughts on that area?
Yeah, so I mean, we kind of cut out, so I didn't get all the question. I don't know if it was my internet or what happened, but I know you were talking about, I think it was Doctor in 7, is that right? I got all my notes over here on my desk, you can see them right there. So where he talks a lot about, like, he talks about, like, because the insurance company is the one that provides they basically provide all the documentation or the contract, if you will. So the homeowner, like, you can't go out and get, unless you get like some sort of special endorsement or something like that. Typically, all the contracts are basically the same, depending on jurisdictions and different laws and things like that in the area. And so typically, when it goes to like litigation, it's usually going to side if it's kind of vague or gray with the insured, as opposed to the insurance company. But there's obviously in a lot of ways, these policies are written They're fairly vague on the front end, and then they kind of try to list out some different specific things. So, for example, data loss is something that is specifically written out in the policies, whether it's 1 year or 2 years, but it gives you that exact date range. Now, sometimes, we see contractors that'll file like data discovery as opposed to data loss, and that'll go through and that'll work just fine. And so sometimes that works. Now, that policy might have been written as data loss, but again, that kind of goes into some of that vagueness and trying to be able to work around that. But a lot of times I've seen it get upheld all the way through the data loss too, where I've seen stuff dropped because the data loss wasn't there. And all the way down to either attorneys not accepting the case or just the insuree losing that litigation battle because the data loss wasn't there. So
yeah,
so there are definitely some, there's a lot of variables in this. It's not like it's a black and white issue where you just get to take it. But the nice part is if you can understand that policy up front, if you can read that and kind of go into it, you can get a pretty good idea. You can build that case up, all the way down to what it takes to replace and do the work that needs to be done to restore that property, all the way down to the documentation that you're going to need to approve that it was storm damage or that it was an insurance loss to be able to file that claim with.
Yeah, that's good insight there. Bill, I want to get back to you on something, but I want to throw it back to Paul here one more time before he has to jump off of here. Paul, any last thoughts on this book, on this topic that you wanted to offer up?
Yeah, sorry, the flight attendant is talking, so I hate to be rude. My last thought before I go is to make sure, though, know that your state and what the state laws are, because there are some states, and a lot of them are a lot tougher, you cannot discuss that policy as the contractor. So to throw that out there, I mean, there's some states that it's a serious offense. So know your laws of what state you're working. If you could even actually discuss policy, you need to know it to know what's going on. But you have to be super careful not to discuss it in certain states, because that is a big deal, a UPDA violation of not knowing that. So know where you're at and what the laws are. Absolutely.
Good point. All right.
And I have to leave, guys. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Appreciate you guys, what you're doing in the industry. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
All right. And that is one of the topics that I wanted to get to is I think there's a couple of different things. Like he said, we want to understand all these things so that we can do our job well. But there are certain hurdles with UPPA that we have to be aware of. Bill, I know that you is that something that you, I guess, have something to say about those UPPA laws and how a contractor should maybe navigate that?
Yeah, that's not an area I know a lot about. I've most of my dealings have been with companies, so I'm real familiar with unfair claim settlement practices laws and bad faith laws and so forth. But I know when it comes to public adjusters and contractors and others, I've never been actively involved in that side. And I usually, if I have a question, there's an attorney in Florida. It actually has offices all over the country, but it's a Merlin law group, Chip Merlin. I run things by Chip. Chip has probably sold more of my books to policyholder attorneys than I ever imagined I would sell to adjusters and insurance agents, which was my primary market. I never really thought about public adjusters and policyholder attorneys, but when you get down to it, you read the book, it's very pro policyholder, right? To me, every insurance company has an obligation, a good faith obligation to look for coverage. It's not always there. It's often not there, but that you're looking for coverage. And that's what I've always done. Most of my last 30 plus years of experience in the industry has been with helping independent agents that belong to our trade association when they disagreed with an adjuster about coverage. So almost all the work I've done has been pro policyholder, and that I'm looking for coverage. That was until I just published my second insurance book fittingly on Halloween called "Why Doesn't Insurance Cover the COVID-19 Pandemic?" And I'm taking an insurer side on this because it doesn't. At least most of these policies don't cover COVID-19 claims. And I caught some flack from some attorneys about that. But I told them, I said, read my other book. I'm actually very pro policyholder, but if the coverage isn't there, it isn't there. There's not much you can do about it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that about your the way that this book was written is it is very much like we're going to do what's fair, and let's look at how this is. And I think that good faith adjusters should be looking for coverage rather than looking for ways to deny something. And I think it comes to that way. I think contractors get frustrated a lot of times where adjusters can be looking for a way to deny something rather than looking for coverage, which I think doesn't really serve the that good faith practice that's out there. You talked a little bit about who you wrote this for and who's using it, but I want to get into that. I kind of joked that we have thousands of people watching this show, but we do have a decent number of people watching the show, mostly contractors, some PAs, some attorneys, that type of thing in the roofing and restoration industry. And who knows who else may watch this, my mother, namely. But you talk about who this book is for. Can you, give me your sales pitch on why everybody watching this show, or at least a bunch of people watching this show, should take this up, take the time to read the 354 pages of it, and really invest into themselves.
Well, I don't know how interesting a read it would be for those that are in the roofing business, because it's insurance nerdy stuff. And if you like people to talk nerdy to you, then that's the book for you. But if you deal a lot with adjusters,
you've got just the group for that.
Yeah, you will have a leg up on a lot of the things they do, because I give a lot of examples of where when you talk about sometimes it seems like they're looking for a way out of a claim. I have a bunch of examples of that and how to counter those kinds. You run across those people sometimes. I think my experience in the industry has been that most adjusters try to do the right thing. They try to pay what the contract calls for, no more, no less. You don't want to pay more because you have a fiduciary obligation to all your other policyholders. If you're paying claims right and left, then the premiums go up. But you need to be fair about it. So I think the book does give you some knowledge. And if you've got a copy with you, maybe if you flash it in front of the adjuster, even if you haven't read it, they'll think that you have. So you can say, look out, buddy, I know what I'm talking about. Or recommend that they get it and maybe they'll do a better job. That's one of the ideas behind it.
Perfect. Well, we're selling books here. That's definitely one of the benefits here. Derik, I'm going to go back around one more time here. Anything else that stuck out to you? And I know you're, I don't know. I kept thinking about a lot of these things in the book and how they relate to you and how you're involved in our industry as a provider. But anything else that you wanted to touch on here?
So I'll say, Bill said, kind of boring claim type insurance type stuff, but it's interesting. So the way, like when I was reading it, like I read it through and Bill does a really good job of also listing out like examples of like cases that he's been involved on or different things like that. So those are all very interesting reads. Like, so you kind of go through that and you're like, I can see where that plays into. But I think as a contractor, you're going to feel the same way. I don't even think it has to be a contractor. If you do anything in the restoration industry, I think it'd be an actual IA or a PA or an attorney, like understanding, the purpose behind the reason that the policy was written. I think that's the kind of the reasoning behind the book, and just understanding the full idea of what's trying to happen. And it's really interesting. And you start kind of plugging in different claims that you might have been involved in, and so you go, oh, this is where this came into effect, that this could have helped me on this claim, or oh, I understand now why the insurance company was denying on this claim. Because I think at the end of the day, the book was very clear. Like, it's not trying to get more out of insurance companies when they shouldn't be paying more, and it's not trying to get less out of them or help people get less. Or I mean, it's really trying to take an insurance policy and make it as black as white as possible. And there's obviously a lot of different areas that can be gray in those policies, but try to understand, like, how can we get them as black and white as possible. And that's kind of always been our goal. We are very specific with our case where we get pulled in on these claims. But I mean, I can definitely give you a handful of people that we have not told them, no, it didn't help. You don't have a claim. And maybe they'll go try and find one for somebody else. But I can promise you, like, if we turn one down, it's because it didn't fail there. And if we take one, it's because it didn't there. And so, we've had to take ours all the way and be deposed on our data loss that we filed, whether it's wind, hail, or tornado, or whatever it is. We just did one from lightning last week. So it again, for us, it's black or white. It either happened or it didn't. That I look at the policy as a contract, kind of like he talks about a lot in the book. And at the end of the day, the homeowner and the insurance company have entered into a contract, and let's follow the contract. That's what it's about. But understanding that contract is what's going to make things actually happen the way that they're supposed to in that contract. And I see contractors very consistently not understand how that policy works, and they get angry when stuff doesn't go their way, and they get excited when stuff goes their way. But I think they could get things to go their way if they understood those policies better. Then not necessarily even go their way, just go the way that it's actually supposed to go. They would take care of their clients better if they understood how the policies. And like Paul said, don't go argue policy. You're not supposed to argue policy. And I don't think that they should either. I don't have any issues with anything, along that. But at the end of the day, like, understand the policy. Should you be filing a claim for the homeowner or what have you?
Right.
Do you have a legitimate claim to file? Like, understand that part of the policy. And then it's up to you as the contractor to say, here's how we prepare this. That's your job. And then if they want to argue back about policy, either the homeowner can get involved in that, or you can get a public adjuster or an attorney or somebody like that to argue back. But so, understand your lane when it gets to there. But that was some of the stuff I really enjoyed. And I think people will really enjoy the book as well. It's not a boring read. If you're just a roofer doing new roofs or something like that, yeah, it's going to be a boring read. But if you are doing restoration work, you should read this book. You need to understand this stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I think there's a lot of situations that you can get into where having this information in your back pocket is going to help you navigate them better. And if nothing else, I think that makes it worthwhile. One of the things that I learned in doing this book really was about the way that these policies are written. And I guess in my head had imagined, a team of people at Allstate, a team of people at State Farm, a team of people at Nationwide, all writing their contracts separately. Whereas a lot of these are licensing contracts that are written by these companies, and then either using them as they come out of the box or modifying them. And then even if they use them out of the box, they may interpret that policy differently. So I think, we do have on one side, the policy is not a commodity. But then on the other side, you could have two companies essentially selling the same piece of paper, the same contract, but it meaning different things based on the way that they interpret and execute that policy. Bill, we're kind of getting near the end of our show here, but I want to go back to you one more time here and really just give you a free for all on any topic that you think would be a big value for contractors, things that they may run into and need this information.
I guess if I had any advice, it would be to be persistent, to choose wisely, first of all, and who your agent is and the company that insures you. Because once again, it's not a commodity. There are differences, even though, as you say, these policies kind of generally speak the same language, and in some cases you find identical language from one form to another. But there are differences, and you can take a policy. When I mentioned my tornado claim, and I was hiring a tree service company to take down 19 40 to 80 foot trees from my yard. Some were still standing, some weren't. And of course, I wanted proof of insurance. And I had one tree service contractor that showed me his policy portfolio, his deck page, certificate of insurance, and all this stuff. And I took a look at it. And I told him, I said, you don't have any coverage for anything you're doing. He had a general liability policy. It was an ISO standard form. Attached to it were 42 endorsements. And one of those endorsements said that he had no coverage for ongoing operations and your work, which is another word for completed operations. So basically, when he left his premises, he had no coverage for anything he was doing. And I knew that when I saw his premium, his general liability premium was like $720, and he's taking down 80-foot trees. I knew then that he wasn't paying for much, and he was totally oblivious to that. So you need a really good agent that's gonna fight for you and keep you informed and make sure you get the right coverage for your business. So that probably my best, even more important than buying the book. And a do-it-yourself kind of thing is find a good agent that you trust and you can rely on, and hopefully they'll take care of you.
Awesome. I am obviously all about finding good agents, more for the referrals, but also for the policies. And that's one of the things that we talk to a lot of agents about is really their consultative approach, them understanding these policies, because there are a lot of agents that are salesmen that, just like roofing salesmen, may not understand their trade, may not understand what they're selling and how all this works out. So very good information. Everybody out there, go check out this book. I'll end up putting a link in the comments here. If you want to go buy it, you can have it in a couple of days and start read it over Thanksgiving or Christmas or something. Guys, I want to thank both of you for being on the show, and Paul in his absence for being on the show. I really appreciate what you've done here, Bill, and you guys just being a part of this.
Thank you, Matt, and thanks, Derik.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Matt. Thanks, Bill.
You got it.
All right.
And I just want to close out the show here. This is episode 12 of the Restoration Industry book review. And it's actually going to be the last episode that we do here for a little while. So we're going to be moving to a little bit different format. We're going to be updating some things. I'm really excited about the production quality, some of the things that we have planned out for this. And so we will be picking up our next episode. It's going to be on December 31st, the last day of the year. And we're going to be jumping into that and really coming up with some great content for 2021 going forward. Guys, if you are in this industry, the restoration industry, roofing industry, really take this seriously and, invest something into yourself. Read stuff like this. You'll make more money. You'll serve your clients better. You'll serve our industry better having this information. And if you know people that would benefit from this information, from this podcast, please take a second, subscribe to us on YouTube, share over some of these episodes to your friends, to the groups that you're in. I would really appreciate it for what we're doing here. All right, guys, have a great